that feeling about laying down and you still feel like you're moving. Once coming back from the Scissor Tail, I went to sleep and sitting and woke up in Robstown. It was our next reader, Paul Austin. Paul wrote. Paul is an actor, director, playwright, teacher, and poet. He doesn't quite do it. The man directed Kurt Vonnegut's play in New York City. He met Kurt Vonnegut, for Christ's sake. His collections of poems, notes on hard times, published by Village Books Press. Oh, okay, his collections of poems was published by Village Books Press. Over the course of his decades-long career, he has written for and about the theater essays, poetry, plays, and spontaneous behavior, a book on acting. His work has appeared in such publications as This Land, Sugar Mule, and the Newport Review. Dreaming Angel, a one-person play, was included in More Monologues for Men by Men. He's currently working on 3 collections: Actors, Mothers and Sons, and Persons of Influence. We're very lucky to have Mr. Paul Austin.
So I'm in this kind of the same position as Joey. The book that's coming out in April called Notes on Hard Times is full of political fury. So I've been in that state of mind for a while. And I came down here because I have great admiration for everything that's going on with PPF and lots of friends whose poetry I admire enormously. So I came down to here. And I came down also to keep Canheda company on a 10-hour drive. It is a hard job. But he doesn't need it because he sings to himself all the way down. And now being introduced to replace someone who is famous for being extremely funny, I'm on the spot. So, however, I did have a few poems with me, none of which were particularly funny, so I tried to select the lightest that I could find. There is one political poem, semi-political poem in there, but for the most part I've avoided my rants. So, and as you heard in the introduction, I've been an actor for a long time. There are 2 pieces. One's very short, one's very long, for which I'll read a little bit later. But I'll start with one that there was an actors bar in Manhattan called Charlie's, and actors would go there, and the bartender was a great old-fashioned Irish bartender. So and he became known to us as Dr. Brennan because after it closed at 2 in the morning. You could stay there as long as you needed to. So he became the good Dr. Brennan. So, and many interesting things happened. And this is something that happened with a very dear acting friend of mine, which is now a very short play poem. It's called 2 Actors Drinking. Charlie's Bar, 2 a.m. It's geological. The whole damn thing. Geological. Layers. Everything is layers. Geology. Layers. Yeah. Pause. They drink. Tomorrow. What? Remember this? Probably not. About 10 smiles, that's it for the night. That actually turned out to be a very important conversation for me. because it is about layers, building characters, some geological things. This next poem is a poem about the philosopher Wittgenstein. Most of us who are trying to write realize that one is always tussling with accuracy and the sense of language, which Wittgenstein devoted a life to. And the poem is called Wittgenstein. It has an epigraph from Voltaire at the beginning, which is, "Doubt is not pleasant, but certainty is absurd." Slap, slap, slap. Wittgenstein would hit his forehead, hoping to knock loose the right word, leaping from neuron to neuron within a whirligig of thoughts. What? What is it? He sought the right word, the exact word, among others, to satisfy a ravenous desire to find sense in nonsense. His life's work had become a quest to decontaminate language, rid its vocabulary of rough estimates with their parenthetical uncertainties. How dearly he wanted to prime mind and body for supple constructions that brought clarity to reason. Despite a misanthropic disposition and occasional delusions of grandeur, he sought a virtuous language that would eliminate double talk, originate word gatherings to free the past from dogma, save the future from false prophets and their inevitable tyrannies. He played the game of language in the music hall of his mind, slip-sliding on false starts, pratfalling with bad choices, spinning verbal cartwheels, hoping to reveal hidden truths in what for him was the natural state of the nonsensical. Obsessed to free his mind, unchain his heart from obfuscating phrases and unconscious falsehoods, he more and more fell into the habit of slapping his forehead, convinced he could in time batter out enough words to recapture the infant thrill when word and thing first came together and gave birth to knowledge. But every time he tried to reason his way to the heart of the matter, the very words he chose simulated unconscious feelings that craved language of their own, making a disrupted muddle of the original formulation. The confusions of thinking, rethinking, and thinking again made him increasingly impetuous in his outward behavior. One day he'd take a satyr's glee at coming close to success, the next he would belabor a fury at just missing it. He took a paradoxical pleasure that his personal confusions were echoes of the puzzles presented by the language itself, and realized he had himself become a laboratory wherein those around him could study the human complexity of asking, a thing is what? A fact is what? A perception is what? I am. Slap, slap. What? This is a little short poem from the book Notes on Hard Times. I was very taken by Bellows' novel Herzog about Delmo Schwartz. And so I started checking into him. And so I have a little poem in homage to him. It's called Delmo Schwartz, American Poet. My immigrant father raised a storm on the cold star of my childhood. Making love in the raging swirls of his influence is a messy business. I keep trying. This is a poem. I'm a great lover of jazz, and I'm writing, I hope, a collection of jazz poems. And this one's about the great jazz pianist Thelonious Monk, and about an evening something that happened in one of his performances at the spot. And it's called Monk. He hovers, flesh and presence, round the story of midnight jazz. A single note hangs suspended in his cigarette whiskey haze. His ears perk open, anticipating. the pleasure of surprise. And Monk himself, captivated, bewitched by the infinite echoes of infinite choices that hold promise of what he most desires, a sound unique to the moment, emblem of his offbeat release. A sound for which he'll run the risk of a one-way, no-return trip to irrevocable residence in the labyrinth of his mind. The note remains aloft for 10, maybe 11 seconds before a motive for an unheard song makes its way out to his fingers and summons a pregnant chord bursting to bring forth a new riff on a narrative first hummed in the dark bowels of a ship as it sailed the middle passage to the American slave blocks, where blue notes inspired by tyrants gave birth to hymns of faith and rage, and called forth changes blown through time from cotton fields to prison bars. Till Monk arrives at the 5 Spot on Manhattan's Lower East Side to jam out a rival anthem and tune the public ears to hear what's needed to keep moving and break the remaining chains. This is a new one. I'm assuming still in progress. Most of us know everything is always in progress. It's called I'd Like, I Long, I Hope. I'd like to not care my body has betrayed me and not despair my dull, dand of dry hair. I'd like to hammer a nail without hurting my wrist, lift 25 pounds and sidestep self-pity, not be appalled by my collapsing face or monetized into a gadget that loves gadgets. I long to drag my wounded beast into the public square once more, refuel my flickering passion, raise my voice to the void of ego. I long to protest the abused, misused, denied the right to grow old. I hope to pass through sure of myself. It's another poem about actors. It's quite long, so I'm going to read just a section of it. But there was a wonderful actor named Jerry Dempsey who spent a lifetime working Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theaters, just a lifetime spent acting. And an absolutely superb actor, and never became famous. And therefore, because I never became famous, we became very good friends. But I saw him one night. There was a marvelous place called the West Bank Theater Bar, West Bank Cafe Theater Bar in Manhattan, and a gang of very talented young people. One of whom at the time was Louis Black, and great composer, performer Rusty McGee, and a wonderful director named Rand Forrester. They put together this, because Lou couldn't get his plays produced, they decided they were all graduates of Yale. They decided they're going to put together this theater bar by this very wonderful innkeeper that owned the bar, who was a great fan of the theater. And they were going to do all new plays, and they were going to do crazy stuff, and it's going to be just a whole new place for all people to go. So all kinds of actors ultimately showed up, I saw Jerry there one night. He was playing in a musical called Xmas, and it was like a black comedy Christmas musical. And Jerry had a part in it, and he was absolutely superb. I mean, he was superb. And by this time he was older, and he was troubled with all kinds of illnesses. His concentration was like this. And he was just marvelous. So I wrote this long narrative poem about that whole performance. So I'll just read you a part of it. He was no great shakes as a singer, but thanks to Crazy Felix, an amateur Schumann, and with whom in 1982 he'd shared a passion for music, he'd acquired a passable way with a song. Words lately had sometimes got lost in the hollows of his mind, worse yet, had sometimes never seemed to have existed. But tonight he knew he'd give them their money's worth. He sang freely, with pleasure, letting the music in, letting it ask him to sing the dark words set to a nostalgic minor key, promising pine cones and Christmas puddings. The kid in the baseball cap, we smile, and one-eyed tear took a two-beat hold before fading to black. Perfect, he thought, sporting his own smile. Baseball boy is on the nose. He's listening, he's in the moment. The applause freckling the darkness was not the fashionable frenzy of big box office crowds playing their parts for media resale, just a simple thank you for the few who wanted their fun without filters. The dialogue following the song was not memorable on the page, but he spoke with wry irony and wit which paid witness to the poetry of his own person. After these many years, he could simply sit inside the reality of fiction, saying words without fuss, letting truth speak for itself. He'd become, it needs to be said, himself a work of art. It had been gradual, this transformation of self, so in most occasions to single him out had slipped past critical notice. He'd been so good for so many, for so long, none could remember if ever he'd acted badly. Oh, my dear, he'd come to think, I may not be famous, but I'm awfully damn those of you having two stage directions, one's a pause and one's a silence. So here's, hopefully I'm right. Here it is. This is called Possible Ways to Play Pinter. A silence is omnipresence before, while, and after every spoken thought. A potential quietus pregnant with dread of an abyss, abundant with woodland chaos waiting to be let loose by an ill-chosen word. The speaker, charged to advance his own ambitions or negate the listeners, they reduce the silence to a lesser cause, intent to confuse the listener, or guide the other's thoughts to the speaker's own, or amend or clarify a change of direction, or avoid the consequences of a silence that renders the speaker victim to his own unspeakable, or the speaker may choose to preserve a silence and render the listener victim to the unspeakable, or more kindly, give the listener time to comprehend. The listener, when given or seizing a turn to speak, may also pursue any of the above. In any case, a silence unattended is fraught with danger for both parties. I'm going to close with a little tribute that I wrote for Samuel Beckett, who has, for those of us who have sort of goals, I'm the guy who rarely laughs out loud. And then somebody said, "What, you didn't think that was funny?" I said, "Oh man, that was hilarious." So, and one of my favorite jokes of all is a part of a sentence of Beckett's when he said that we were, quote, astride the grave at a difficult birth. So that's from William Godot. So anyway, so this is called for Beckett. Roll out, roll up, roll on, roll down, roll in, roll through, no matter, because, despite, whenever, again. before. We have, we do, we will continue rolling on, and on.